Televised? Not televised or anything?
It's recorded.
Okay.
It is recorded.
This will be the 42-9.
Okay, we'll call this workshop to order,
But that's for this week.
and the time is 4
o'clock.
4 o'clock. Let's get it going, guys.
Okay, thank you everybody for being here. Staff, I welcome all of you. I'm glad to see some of you here. Mayor and City Commissioners, I'll start with thanking you for the time that you're going to take to go through this budget. Here's our budget. So obviously we don't want to go through these two folders. We've done our best to synthesize this information and filter it so that we can explain it in enough detail that you can ask questions without having to go through 900 pages. So, we passed out two things today, just so that you keep it handy. We passed a proposed calendar that starts today, August the 2nd, and we passed this sheet, which is called Fiscal Year 2022-23 Budget Cover Page. So, the question might be, why isn't the cover page on the cover of the magazine, right? Well, as some of you probably know, we don't get the official tax roll until the last week of July, okay? That was last week, and so we had 99.9% of the budget complete. And so what we had to do when we got the tax roll was refine our numbers in order to ensure that we were abiding by state laws, which we're going to talk about here in a minute. So those are the two things that you received, and I'm going to go through this page in detail about property tax rates, because the legislature a few sessions ago made it a point to use language that offends
confusing.
that offends people. So we're going to go through that. So don't worry. And then the last thing that we just passed out was this. This is the presentation that I'm going to go through today. I'm going to go through it rather quickly, but I'm going to go through it at the pace that you want. So you slow me down when you need to, and speed me up when you need to. Now, what I want you to know is, very importantly, you're going to spend, some 10 to 14 hours listening to budget, right? And there's several reasons for that. The primary one is we want to give you as much information as we possibly can going into this budget. You're not going to remember it all. We're not going to remember it all, but you need to hear it. And when you hear it, we're hoping that it makes you ask the questions that are necessary for you to do your job in the city of McAllen and your districts. Okay? If you allow me, I'll go ahead and get started.
Please.
All right? So, here we go. Welcome. Thank you. 2023 budget.
Thank you, Roy.
So, the first thing that I wanted to do was to kind of give you highlights. So, this is a massive budget, okay? Biggest budget in the history of McAllen. Last year's budget was the biggest budget in the history of McAllen up to that point. So, you've got a very robust city, a very dynamic city that's seeing an incredible amount of growth, both in construction and therefore ad valorem footprint, as well as sales tax revenue and every other revenue that we can see. We have rebounded from those awful years that we saw a couple of years ago, and we are doing as well as ever. I mean, I'll call it all cylinders are burning, and you should be very proud of what you accomplished. So here's the highlights, and believe me, we put out 16. There's probably 50 highlights that we could include. But I'm going to start with, we are recommending in this budget a property tax rate.
Everyone, we didn't hear that? A little louder?
Exactly, yes sir, I'm sorry. So, we're going to propose a property tax rate reduction. Where's the media?
When we need them.
Right here. So front page, property tax rate reduction for the city of McAllen. And it's not symbolic. Okay, and you're going to see that here in a minute. It's a real tax reduction, and a few weeks ago when you approved some mid-year adjustments, the staff and I promised you that you were going to have a lot of flexibility, and you will. You're going to have a lot of flexibility to do what you think is necessary with this tax rate or another. You can push it down if you need to, as well as everything that's in it. The budget is a $620 million total budget for the city of McAllen. And contrary to what I heard the other day by a city leader, former city leader, he said, well, yeah, that includes the money in the bank. No, it doesn't. That's actual expenditures for the city of McAllen, $620 million. If you add the money in the bank, it's over $1 billion. Capital projects, believe it or not, we've got $278 million of construction money in this budget. Unheard of. I read an article this morning from a city that I love, not as much as McAllen, but that I love. And they have a $1.5 million capital improvement budget. $1.5 million. You have $278 million of construction going on here. We've got a recommendation for compensation and benefits increase for employees. I'm really happy about that, and I hope that you agree that we should spend some time in that discussion. We've got over 2,000 employees on 2,500, and we're recommending an increase in compensation. There's 32 new employees that city manager's office is recommending, 32 new employees. There's a lot more that were requested. You're going to see that. We are obligating all of the ARPA funds. In other words, we have a plan to ensure that all of the ARPA funds that we will or have received are going to be spent on projects that you've selected. And thank you, Sergio, for that, for some awesome innovation in making that happen. You just read an article where the county is going to have to send money back. So those things are real. You have to go through all of these hoops to ensure that you receive the money properly, that you adjudicate the money properly, and that you spend it properly and spend it properly. We're increasing the general fund balance significantly, and that means your reserve is going up significantly. Our revenues over expenses for the proposed budget is $6.2 million of revenue in excess of expenses. We have 223 days of working capital in this budget. 223, our policy is 140. That's in the general fund. We're funding over $6 million of department requests. In other words, we're going to go through that. The departments as a whole requested over $10 million in capital and employees and furniture and all kinds of stuff. We're recommending over $6 million of it. We'll tell you in a little bit why we're at that number. And that's just in the general fund. We're funding Anzaldua's port of entry with over $80 million. That's a huge deal, and I'm going to keep my word. I'm going to kiss the dirt the day we break ground. We're increasing transfers to the chamber. I appreciate Josh being here. So that's a big deal. I didn't know if you were going to be here or not, but that's a real thing. We're increasing our recommendation to that. We've got over $80 million of sales tax projected for last year. That's never happened. $60 million to the general fund, $20 million to Development Corp. That's never happened. Sales tax reduces the property tax rate by approximately 19%. That's the whole purpose of having a development corporation. Not only does it give you the money to do all of these projects that you all do and help programs and agencies, but it pushes down the tax rate, okay? And that's a real number. In fact, when you get your property tax bill, it'll say, where's Becky? And so it'll say the number. Once we make the number exact, it's going to be a 19%. That number, not so long ago, was up in the 24% because our valuations had grown steadily, but not like we've seen this year. There were 3%, 4%, 2%, 1%. Well, this year we're at 13%. So it's a huge ad valorem number, so it pushes down that percentage. And then to continue to fund CIP through a segregated sales tax that the City Commission created when we brought in Insight and gas royalty. So you've got an infusion of money every year into CIP. So you've got that in your packet. We actually put it in here twice because it's so important. Hopefully you can see some of it. If not, I suggest you do LASIK as I did. For the general fund, that number way on the top left is $72,981,000. That's what we have in fund balance at the beginning of the year. we're projecting that if we go with this budget, you will have $79 million in the general fund reserve, general fund only. That's a lot of money, and we have been blessed with wherewithal to be able to do that. You're gonna hear about the hotel occupancy tax, the next line, hotel venue tax, the development corporation, the Christmas parade fund, because we've created its own fund, so we're very transparent about all of the expenses and revenues going in and out of there. The EB5, parkland zones have been very effective since the commission changed our strategy about 5 or 6 years ago to allow us to use it for maintaining what we have. Friends of Quinta is going to be a topic that we're going to talk about separately. That's one of 2 only funds that are in the red, and we're going to explain why. CDBG, downtown services, drainage fee, you're going to see we're almost going to complete the projects that we promised our community we would do. The American Rescue Plan, I talked a little bit about that. Looks like we will be able to use all of that money. We've got all of the debt service funds, and then we've got all of the capital funds. So right there on the 1, 2, 3, 4th column from the right, you see the total appropriation number of $630,761,399. And we're going to cover all of that. I just wanted to make the point of what kind of budget we're looking at here. Any questions on that? On the next page, so we're looking at the 5-year summary of working capital. You know, there's a lot of things that drives how we prepare budgets. Obviously, revenues is number 1. Expenses, you've got a little bit, to work with because you can decide what to approve and what not. But then there's this general fund requirement of fund balance that we have to maintain. And it's been very tricky. I remember 3 years ago when we were first getting out of the slump in sales tax, we cautioned the city commission about several things. One was, we're gonna look like we've got deficit budgets. It's gonna look for a couple of years like that revenues are less than expenses. That's because we had so much money coming in from the federal government and we had to spend it. And so we said, couple years, we're gonna see that and then we're gonna get out of it. We've gotten out of it. However, look at our fund balances in the last few years. We were at 56.9 million before the pandemic. We went to 75 right before and during the pandemic. It was an actual of 72, our budget was 75. We estimated 72 and we're proposing about $79 million of a fund balance. And so on the bottom, it gives you an idea of what was going on with federal funds. We had 18.9 come in 20, then 25 million, then 14 million, and then the last little bucket of $3 million is in this current fiscal year, which we will talk about also. So for the beginning fund balance, again, $72 million. Total revenues, we're projecting 148 million. Again, general fund. Expenses of 141 and a fund balance of 79,245 for 223 days of working capital. On the next one, shows you a little different. It gives you a bar graph of kind of the same thing, the numbers I just gave you. And so it's important, for the community to understand that we went through some anomalies that we may never go through again. And in fact, we hope we don't, because it was the product of some really hard times. So we want to make sure that we all understand that a lot of the reason that we had very, very big fund balances was because of that infusion of money, but we're no longer seeing that. So this is real revenue from your community. So I talked about this a little bit a minute ago. So you'll see that in 2021 we had a little bit of expense over revenue, and then even the adjusted 2022 we had a little bit of expense over revenue. But that's okay because your fund balances were still going up. And what we're doing is, like I said, we were spending money that was coming in from the federal government and assigning it to its own fund. So for the proposed budget, we're inverting it back the way we like it, and we've got 148 versus 141. Any questions on that? So, we talked about this graph a couple of years ago because it was going in the direction that we wanted it to go. Okay? And so, what I want to point out here was back here, well, obviously that was 2017. Look, these 3 years were rough. Remember that? 15, 16, 17, our sales tax revenue was going down. And thanks to the gang, where's the gang? I think in part, we turned that around. But those were tough years right there. Sales tax going down 2 years in a row. But right before that, what we were seeing was that the gap between sales tax and property tax was closing. That's a good thing. You want your ad valorem, which is your footprint in your city, to catch up to sales tax. And the reason is that ad valorem revenue is much more stable, obviously, than sales tax. Look at the two curves, and it tells you that. And so one of the things that we're seeing right now is, this is a great curve on valuation. But what we're seeing right now is this explosion in sales tax after the pandemic. And so that gap got a little bigger. We had gotten it, I'm not gonna count that because that was the pandemic, but we had gotten it to within 16% of each other. We're back to about 23. 23% more sales tax than ad valorem. So why do we say that we like ad valorem? It's very predictable. When we put a budget together, we can estimate within 0.25% of what our revenue is gonna be. Because citizens of McAllen are very reliable. And so we use a 97% collection rate to come up with this number. 97% of the total revenue we should collect, that's what we plug in, and we'll usually come in between 97.25 and 97.5. So, this is something that you hear around the community in the valley of how, you hear it as a negative, how the region is outpacing McAllen. I have a different story. So, first of all, I like to make fun of my friends and neighbors in the valleys. That's not for the monitor. Is that they're growing up, right? Through the years here, in the last 5 to 10 years, they're growing up. They're getting their stores and their retail shops and their Walmarts. They're not having to come to McAllen anymore to do everything that they need to do to, to sustain their families. But guess what? Our sales tax has never stopped. So we have to understand, acknowledge, and accept that the region is huge. This region is huge. And so that market share is going to continue to drop. But as long as our graph continues to go to the right and up, I think we're going to be okay. So the red is basically all sales in Hidalgo County, and the blue is McAllen. This is another graph of the same thing. In 2003, we were 48% of all sales in the county. We're at 38. Right? If you see that on its own, that's not look like a bad thing. We're in really, really good shape.
You're talking about the red is the whole region.
Right, the
So
whole
we
region.
account for about 1/3
More or less.
38%.
versus
More than half back then.
versus 21 other cities.
Well, no.
At least in Hidalgo County.
What this shows is total sales. Okay, so you're at about
4.6 over there,
$4.5 billion of sales, 4.6?
and we are
We're at
1.6. A third.
Yeah, that's what this one shows.
That's
right
cool.
here.
That's great.
Next one's a good one. So here's the property tax rates that we've seen through the year. We went all the way to 2013, some 10 years back. So with the proposed rate of $47.99 versus our current rate of $49.56, we're lower. We basically are matching 18-19 tax rate. And remember, we had a bond issue. and that was the reason for the tax rate to go up. So we're almost back to where we were before the bond issue. So we're basically giving it all back. Now, one thing that I want you to consider, I'm not recommending it, but something that you should consider. We're recommending $47.99, right? If you look at this figure right here, it was $47.63, $47.63, same thing, same thing. That's all the way back to 2014. I think that there is room, if you want to consider it, to go back below that number, which you could tell your community, we're dropping the rate lower than it was almost 10 years ago. Something to consider. We can talk about it at wrap up. We didn't do it because my conservative nature won't let me, but you've got some space. And to do that, oh, that's important. To do that, to go from the $47.99 to $47.62, it'll cost us about $395,000 to the fund balance.
How long do you think we could keep that, other than just do one fiscal?
Well, if we keep going the way we are, Commissioner, and I think that the total valuation is gonna keep, maybe not at the clip that we did this year,
Right.
but it's gonna keep going up, I think you'll be able to reduce taxes in the future, again.
Because, I mean, when we talk about that, especially, when it gets out in the media about this tax reduction, it's only as good as the next fiscal year in terms of, was it really one, or was it one so you can put and get published in the newspaper? And I think most of us being fiscally conservative, we're looking long-term. We have to make it, not permanent, but make it significant. In other words, it was more than just 1 year of that reduction. You kept it around for, like you did, 2014 all the way through about 2018.
Yeah.
To me, that's a good stretch of years, keeping the same tax rate. And so I think maybe not go all the way down to what you're, at least, I know you're not recommending it, but at least considering it. But we get our tax rate where we know we can at least offer some stability to our residents.
Sure.
That, hey, they can depend for hopefully 2, 3, maybe 4, maybe 5 years, where that's where we can.
Yeah,
use as
I
a
don't,
benchmark.
I mean, the way things are going right now, Commissioner, there's no reason for us to believe we're gonna need a property tax increase, unless you have a bond election. And in fairness to the city of McAllen and prior administrations, for the last 12 years, the only time that we've had a property tax increase is due to bond elections. And so we basically went to the community and said, is this okay with you? They said, yes, we raised it. Otherwise, McAllen just doesn't do that.
And that was the
18.
drainage bond.
Drainage in
Right.
18, and then streets in 13.
Right. How does Untitled do us figure, or it doesn't affect? the
Sure
rate?
does.
It
Yeah,
does, right?
it will, because, and we're gonna get to that here in a minute. Your transfers to the general fund will increase, and that's pushing that tax rate further down.
I see.
Not automatically, you have to do it. Okay?
But it's already in the budget.
Yeah.
Right,
So that's already accounting for a $6 million
right, but I think what you're saying is,
increase.
when truck traffic starts and we see new revenue, is that what you're asking?
No, actually, I was looking at when we actually acquired the debt.
Oh, yeah, no, the debt doesn't impact that because,
That's-
that debt is being paid through revenue from the bridge. Doesn't
Oh,
come
I
from
see,
the
okay,
city
so
at
it's
all.
independent of that.
Right.
But you're right, I mean, once it does open.
Once the truck
then
traffic comes
you're
in,
gonna get
and you go from $3 million of revenue to 12, and you start transferring it to, because it goes to McAllen and Hidalgo,
To the general fund.
then it's not automatic, but it's gonna put a lot of pressure on you to lower that tax rate.
Right.
So I wanted to show you this again, for several reasons. This is the cover page. And on the right, it shows the current tax rate of 49.56 and the proposed of 47.99. So it is significant. It's 157 basis points. That's a lot, you know? However, for total transparency, you go to the 1, 2, 3, 4th line. The legislature changed all of this language. It used to be effective rate and all this stuff. So now it's called no new revenue tax rate, no new revenue maintenance and operations tax rate, voter approval tax rate, and debt rate. Those three in the middle are 3 new terms that happened 2 sessions back. And one of the most important ones is that second to the last, which is the voter, whistle, please.
Slow it down.
That one
slow it
right
down.
there?
Yeah.
So if you see that figure, it's 4869. Okay, so for total transparency here, if you adopt a tax rate of over 4869, you have to go to the voters to approve it. 4869. We're recommending 4799. So even then, we're going 70 basis points down below that threshold.
Let me ask you this, if we were to keep the same rate at .4956, which is this past year,
You have to go to an election.
you have to go to election to
Yes,
keep
sir.
it? Okay, got it.
Okay, so that's the same number, 4799. You love the graphic? That's Angie. As good as we could get. So the original budget, based on the fact that the commission asked us to look at a property tax reduction, was put together with 4899. However, from last week to this week, we redid the budget based on this new number because the valuations went up so high. And here's the valuation. Look at this number. The total tax roll for this year, which we got last week, is $11.275 billion. That's up from 9.95. That's a lot. And I think it's in part all of the construction that you've been seeing in the last couple of years, expansion and appraised values going up. All of those three things. But you've seen a lot of construction going on in the last few years. They're finally going into the tax roll and it's being captured. So I want to give you some figures. If you go back to 2016, from 16 to 17, 2016 we saw a 7.8% increase. That was one of the highest increases we had seen. The following year we dropped to 1.8% increase. Then 4.7, then 6, then 2, then 3, and now 13.
Roy, somewhere that I read was the figure of new buildings, or new construction. What was that figure?
I don't have that figure, but we'll bring it when we go through the
I read
detail.
somewhere, but it was a little over 1 billion. So the 11.2.
1 billion of construction?
1 year.
No, I don't think.
No,
No.
that's not
I
right.
think. well,
We'll get that figure.
we'll get
We're
that
actually debating that figure right now with the appraisal district.
Okay. That one.
But we'll refine that.
Yeah, I wanna throw out a number that would be.
Yeah.
Get it right.
Yeah.
Okay, so here we always show you this. We tell you that a budget is much more than a book with numbers, right? It's not an accounting book. It's your vision. It's a vision of the community. When somebody goes through this budget, they have to see clearly what's important, and this is obvious. Public safety is the vast majority of your general fund. Highways and streets are to the right, then health and welfare. Culture and recreation has always been second to public safety. And so, you might question, well, why is general government so high? That's because it has a lot of departments in general government, and we're gonna show you what that is in a minute. But it's obvious that public safety, is big, and it has increased every year, no matter what. One of the things that's very important to us is street maintenance. You saw it in our citizen survey. We're gonna have a follow-up survey because we wanna make sure that we're hearing what we think we're hearing. Our streets in general are in good shape. And that's because McAllen, for a long, long time, before we were here, made it a priority to ensure that our streets are in good shape. And so, other than in 2017, because we were seeing a dip in revenue, we've done fairly well, up in the $3 million range of just in maintenance. That's patching, that's resurfacing, that's Cutler, the oil that we use in some locations. And in this year right here, we infused about $500,000 more out of the development corporation. So that's something that we can consider when and if you think we need to do that. Okay, so all that was just data of what we've been seeing here in the last few years. Let's talk about what's in your budget, or in your proposed budget. So again, this is the figures that we had up until 2 weeks ago in putting the general fund together. We were at $5.1 million of revenues over expenses. However, last week that we got the new tax roll, we updated that, and you're at 6.264 million of revenue over expense. So we're gonna go through, like I said, all the funds. We're gonna have an overview today, but then all of these folks are gonna be in front of you. You can ask them questions in detail. But we've got about $138 million of total revenue in the general fund. Gives you a total resources of $221 million. On the expense side, we're at $132 million. That's where that little star is. And we did that because I wanted to make sure you knew, as we said in the first page, that it does include a 3% increase cost of living. And so the beauty about that number is that you can do, several things with that number, which we're going to recommend you consider. We plugged in 3%. However, as we're going through the budget, we realized that we needed to recommend an upgrade or a benefit enhancement to our pension plan. Okay? I'm going to tell you that McAllen is probably the atypical community when it comes to the pension plan. It is very conservative. It was conservative before I got here. It's conservative now. And everybody says that, by the way. We're conservative. Well, I'm going to show you what it means. So the beauty of what we want to do with our pension plan, it's called an updated service credit. Okay? And what that does is for employees, like many of the ones in this room, that have tenure, and remember, we don't have longevity in this city. A lot of the cities around us has longevity, and that's something that we told the commission we're going to look into. We're not ready to do that right now, but we're working it. We're working to bring you something. So what we do is that we're very deliberate about employees' pension. We're hoping that when they leave, and hopefully they retire, right, that they actually retire, that they have enough revenue to maintain their families. I mean, they're not going to have the same salary, obviously, that they have now, but something that's relevant. And so what this updated service credit does is if you're moving in the organization and your salary increases, it attempts to keep up with those increases in salaries. If you don't do that, then that pension benefit becomes eroded because it's based on a salary that you used to have, right? And so in order to combat that, TMRS back in about 1985 introduced the updated service credit to do that. So what I like about how we do it in McAllen is that we do it, again, I'm going to use the same word very deliberately. We look at what the cost is going to be before we do it. And you say, well, doesn't everybody do that? No. You have this list? Where? No. So many cities do it the way we do, and that's that we do an updated service credit. Is it in the bottom of that? Okay. Can you pass them out? And I would say that a lot of them use science the way we do, but a lot of them don't. There's over 1,200 cities that are in TMRS. I spent 13 years on that board, and we did a lot of really good things. So I really do understand it. So there's almost 1,300 cities in TMRS, 1,250 más o menos. Half of them do updated service credits as we do, about 620, and the other half do what's called repeating. That they actually passed an ordinance that repeats this benefit every single year automatically. We do not do that. So this list that we just passed out to you are the 600 and some cities that do it every single year, including Alamo, Alton, Brownsville, Brownsville PUB, Donna, Edinburgh, Hidalgo, La Feria, Los Fresnos, Mercedes, Mission, FAR, Port Isabel, Rancho Viejo, Rio Grande City, Roma, and South Padre Island. Those cities do it every single year. We do not recommend we do that. Maybe someday we will. We're not doing that today, and I don't see that in the foreseeable future because I like that we evaluate this thing before, because then it gets lost, right? And it doesn't have to come back to the city commission. With a repeating ordinance, it never goes back until they eliminate it. So, all that being said, what does it cost to do this updated service credit for the city of McAllen? It costs 0.42% of payroll. So, if you wanted to cap that compensation at 3%, what I recommend is that we reduce it by 0.42 and go to 2.58% increase in salaries and the other 4.2 for this USC. I hope that what you do is do 3% and the 0.42 for USC, but that's to be determined. You've got 3 weeks to think about that. Again, in the budget is 3%, so if you did 2.58 and updated service credit, the number doesn't change.
So what's your recommendation on that again?
So, my recommendation is that you do 3% and you do an updated service credit.
Because that's not what that.
That is not what that says.
Well, the numbers that we have right now are based on that or your recommendation?
On this right here, on 3%.
And should we go with a 0.42, also the net difference?
Right, perfect question. That difference is about $300,000. Okay, that's that 0.42%.
Those numbers, Roy, because we're easily confused.
Yes, sir. So, okay, I mean, I don't want to dwell on that, but I do hope that you consider the updated service credit, even if we reduce the COLA, because it does help the tenured employees. You must be in the city 4 years minimum to be eligible for that enhancement. So I wanted to talk about this because you saw that graph where general government seems to be a big portion of the organization, and what we want is public safety and quality of life, right? Culture, recreation, quality of life. But general government takes in a lot of departments, and that's what it is right there: city commission, special service, city manager, city secretary, audit, vitals, passport, municipal court, finance, budget, tax office, purchasing, legal, grant, human aid, HR, planning, IT, PIO, 311, city hall. So it's a bunch, right? Compared to culture and recreation is parks and recreation and the community centers and the library. So you're still doing very, very well. So enterprise funds, we talk about this sometimes and it's kind of an abstract thing. Yes, sir.
For, during the process on grant administration, I'd like to see a little more figures on what we're doing, the department, and what successes we've had during the process.
Sure.
Okay?
We'll bring them in.
And then see,
Yeah, and as we go, Commissioner, if those kinds of things are of interest, we'll bring that department in. So we'll do it, not a problem. So enterprise funds, that's basically, the general fund is not funding these. And in fact, these funds help us. They help the general fund maintain costs down. Sanitation, the golf course doesn't send us any money, but that's okay. They don't take any money. Convention center certainly does, and in fact, Yahida recommended a higher transfer to general fund. Performing arts, airport, I mean, that's not only a quality of life, you want that to be a moneymaker. It does that. Transit, metro, toll bridge, which is Hidalgo, that's a monster. Okay, I mean, that's already making, $11 million a year. And then on Salduas, that's our future. Internal services that basically provide services for other departments: fleet, general depreciation, health, retiree, workers' comp, property and casualty. Any questions on that?
Quick question.
Yes, sir.
The shuttered venue,
Grant?
grants helped with the convention center, correct?
Performing arts.
Oh, I'm sorry, performing arts, sorry. Got it wrong. And then the airport also got a couple of plugs of money also.
Big bullets. You're gonna see that.
And
Metro got a lot.
And that was all through either ARPA or
CARES.
CARES, right?
Mhm.
Okay.
And you're gonna see them. So yeah, Metro relies on the Development Corp. That was one of the reasons we created the Development Corp, was to create Metro and the Central Station. They take big bucks, which is what we intended to do. You know, over $1 million a year. During CARES, that went down to nothing. The federal government was funding it directly. Total general fund revenue by source. I always find this interesting. The sales tax, 45%, property 35%. Those were actually closer not so long ago, but because sales tax is doing as well as it is, the gap got a little bigger. But that's not a bad thing. And so that's how it's divided. Transfers in, transfers. America Rescue Plan, 3.2 million. Licenses, franchise, and so on. Any questions on that? So by service area, now we went from numbers to a graph. Public safety, again, almost half of the whole general fund. And in fact, all of ad valorem goes there.
All up below.
4.5% increase from last year's adjusted budget, includes a 3% cost of living adjustment. In the general fund alone, 11 new employees, and we'll go through that. And then street maintenance at $3.2 million.
The 11 new employees does not include public safety, or does it?
Yes, it does.
Includes public
There-
safety.
Yeah, we're recommending 2 police officers. There it is right there. So, all of the departments requested a little more than this. We're recommending a total of 32. Some are part-time, some are seasonal, but nevertheless, it's a new position. And so in the general fund, we're looking at 11. That includes 1 at tax office, 1 at purchasing, 1 at planning, 1 at IT, 2 police officers, 1 in fire, 1 in building code, administrative, 1 plans examiner, 1 in code enforcement, and then 1 groundskeeper in code enforcement. Environmental health, I'm sorry.
I assume the city's pretty well staffed. Doesn't seem like a large market. Look at this one in previous years, we had pretty large requests for even big positions, right? Like a lot of.
Yeah, so usually there's more requests in police, for one. You know, our census kind of, not put the brakes on it, but we thought we were growing at a bigger clip than we were. And so we're right where we need to be if you want to be at that
The
2.0 ratio, which we've got 300 cops right now. This would put us at 302. And we're at about 153,000, so it's right on.
So let me ask you the question. This is the city management recommendation. If you combine all the requests, what were the total number of employees?
I'm going to show you
Oh,
here in a minute.
okay.
Over here on the enterprise funds that we just talked about, we got sanitation, convention center 1, event coordinator 2 at the convention center, seasonal 3 audio visual and technicians, and another event coordinator, another 3. In Metro, we're looking at 10. We're going to bring Metro in to talk to you. Don't be shocked. It's a good thing. We're looking at routes and how to better serve the city, and we think we can do it. And then in risk administration, we've got 1 more. So in the general fund, 11, and everything else, 21.
And they'll bring in, usage.
Yes. Yes, sir. This is the one we didn't recommend. You guys are good. So there's 9 of them, a lieutenant, and we'll talk about that later, and the fire chief will be in front of you also. 6 firefighters. I might as well tell you now, because it looks strange that they're asking for 6 and we're not doing it. Police and fire are 2 different things, right? Police, you try to go with a ratio of population, basically because they're out in the community. right? And they're having to look out for every citizen. Fire department is different. Fire department is stationed at different locations that are supposed to be strategic so that the response time is what it is, right? You've got 8 stations or 7 stations right now. The reason that he is requesting 6, the chief is that in the 5-year plan, we're looking at planning another station, okay? And much like we did for Station 8, which was very prudent, right? We're about to start construction in Station 8. We have all the personnel because every year we're adding 2 or 3 firefighters so that that big hit didn't hit you. So here's what I would say to that. So if we get the SAFER grant, maybe you should consider bringing them in, and we start stacking that up for that new station. I just think it's too soon, but again, if you do get the SAFER grant, basically it pays for 6 firefighters.
But that would be for Station 9?
Station 9. Right, or we're also looking, yes, it is yes, but we're also looking at the airport station.
Oh, I see.
That airport station is a problem. It's a real problem for us that we're probably gonna talk about during budget. So those are the 9 that are not recommended. It's not much, really. If you take out the firefighters that are being asked because of the grant, there's only 3.
So, excuse my sarcasm, and I warned you. You mean to tell me Chief Victor didn't ask for any more
He asked for
officers?
2.
That's all he asked?
It took me 9 years, but I got
Because
it.
historically, he's asked for 7, 8, I think even one year he asked for 12.
Yeah, we had a
Well,
lot. That's
yeah.
what I remember.
Yes, sir.
So I just,
Nah,
He
he
twisted
really
the arm or
he
something?
sharpened his pencil this time. He did really
Okay.
good. He did good.
it just seemed odd to me.
Yes, sir. The decision package. So we can go as much detail as you like. What I would suggest is, and I tell you this every year, is this is what you need to look at in your free time. I am gonna go through it, but look at it in your free time to see if it brings questions. And then we can talk about it while we go through the budget process. However, I wanna highlight a few things so that you don't waste time on stuff that you don't need to.
That's what-
Right, the one with the big nose?
So, on page 25, basically, we're recommending everything that they're asking for. 26, pretty much the same thing. These are all of the budget, budget requests by departments,
Okay.
right? So you got audit, vitals, passports, municipal
Right.
court, management and budget, tax office. On page 28, with the top saying purchasing, we are looking at adding adding personnel to purchasing. However, based on the discussions we had when we were preparing the budget and how long it may take us to get that kind of talent, we're recommending we fund half the year. It's gonna take us that long to figure it out. And so that's why you see the disparity between the 2 numbers. But we are recommending it. On page 29, there's an interesting number there of 490,000 in the negative, which is a good thing for us because it's decreasing costs. So what we do every year, commissioners, is that we actually have a turnover adjustment. And what that means is we fund every position that we have at 100%. 100%. In other words, worst case scenario. However, we know that we're never at 100%. So we actually go through a calculation. This isn't a plug number. We take the average of the amount of time that it takes to fill a position, and we take the turnover rate, which is at about 10%, go through that calculation, and that gives us the math of what we need to do for a credit. We've been using about $1.5 million for several years, and because our organization has grown, we think we can credit it another 490,000 safely. That's what that means. So then on page 30, we did pretty well. We didn't do one line item requested by information IT, and Robert's okay with that. On 31.
He's smiling, so.
On
must be okay.
31, there's quite a bit of capital outlay request by IT, and it shows that I'm not recommending it. However, we are recommending it, we're just moving it to an IT fund. We have a specific fund that grows through the years, and when we've got enough money, we use it. It's specifically for IT, so we are funding all of those items.
So there's a fund for it, just not under the general fund.
That's correct.
Got it.
Yes, sir. On page 32, we're going to, I don't want to get into that kind of detail, but lead customer service is going to go to a working supervisor, so that's an increase in authority and scope and therefore wages. 33 is all funded. 34, you're going to see this from time to time. Look at that third line where it says other services, rental, general depreciation. So what that means is that we're buying a vehicle that we're recommending that we buy, but we don't have enough money in the depreciation fund to buy it, right? So what we have to do is fund it through the general fund. However, every few years, you've heard this before, the general depreciation gets really healthy, and there's no need to fill the gap. And we feel that in several circumstances here, that's happening. And we're going to show you that general depreciation fund. It's got a lot of money in it. There's no sense in hitting the general fund if you don't have to. Same thing on that 142.6. That's a big number right there. That's the same thing that's happening there. We've got some items on the bottom that we're not recommending, so you may want to look at that and ask when they're up in front of you.
What page are you in?
That was 35.
35?
Now I'm on 36. You'll see there, the big request is $393,000 for 6 firefighters, and I just told you what's going on there. So basically, if we get the grant, and we want the firefighters, we do it, it doesn't cost us anything. That's why it's got a 0. 37, on the fire department, there's a few things on the bottom that we're not recommending. And you know, it's basically, it's our best guess as to where to best use the money. I say guess, I think there's science to it, right? On page 38, continue with the fire. Because we're not recommending some of the personnel, the chief is asking for 3 SUVs, we're recommending 2. That's the difference there on page 38. I'm sorry, wrong page.
Yeah, I'm doing it.
There you go. 39 is pretty much all in line. We're gonna look at the salary adjustment request separately, but otherwise, requests are being met. Page 40, same thing. 41. There's a pretty good request there in the middle of that page, $35,000. Again, wrong page. Right here for engineering and architect fees. And I don't blame Eduardo for looking to have that in case he needs it, but I'd rather go to you when we do need it for a special project. So that's why I'm not recommending it.
Which one was that one?
On page 41, right in the middle of the page, engineering and architect fees.
Yeah.
Yeah. $35,000. If we need it, we'll come to you and get it from the fund. This one in engineering, not recommending 1 truck. Page 43, everything's being recommended. On 44, there's,
On, on the Untitled, if construction is not supposed to start, or will it start at the end of next year?
we're breaking ground in 2022.
In 2022, okay. Is there additional personnel in this budget for inspections or anything
No,
like that?
because those facilities, Commissioner, 99% of the personnel is federal officers.
Yeah, but aren't we going to have some of our own people there? No?
It's southbound traffic. For northbound, we've got all of the toll booths. We're just gonna expand them, so we have the personnel for it.
Okay.
So here on page 44, there's been a desire on all of our part to ensure that we're paying our employees correctly. A lot of our folks have certain certifications, and so there's a lot of reasons to look at this, and it's not only this department. I mean, you can go to engineering, health, environment, convention center, they have certain expertise. But I think that we need to do a little more studying on this so that we're sure of what we're doing. I'm not recommending it. We can revisit it if the city commission likes, so I'll highlight it that we're not recommending it.
Can I ask you a question on the
Yes.
obvious? So that $6 million that you referred at the very beginning of your presentation about revenues over expenditures, when we look at this now on the decision, is that from that $6 million, is this what we would look at or consider if we're wanting to make decisions based on what you're not recommending?
The answer is yes and no, and I'm gonna slide to tell you why.
Very good. I like that. You're prepared, Mr. Rodriguez.
I love budget. So, let's see, page 46. So, big request here. You've got this is health and environmental code. Aerial bucket truck, 150,000, and a tractor mower, 85,000. You don't see a recommendation, that's because we moved it to CIP. We're
Okay.
actually recommending it.
You moved from what, I'm sorry?
To CIP, to the capital
Okay.
improvement fund.
The mosquito control, you're not recommended additional?
What page are you on, Tony?
You're 45.
44.
44.
Right in the middle of the page, the certification page for the mosquito.
Oh, yeah?
I know. You're not recommending,
Yeah, that's certification pay. Certification pay.
yeah,
It's not equipment or anything. It's basically, we've got folks that are certified, and we want to make sure we keep them. The department head does. I just want to study it a little more. I don't think we have enough time to do that. And again, I'm going to show you where we are with this budget. This budget is increasing 4%, okay, compared to last year on the expense side. That's about as high as you want to go. This budget does have flexibility, right? I'll say it again. But we just have to keep in mind that these are going to be recurring costs. So in the $6 million, I'll go ahead and give you a little preview. If there is capital that you want to spend, you got to take it from there. Because it's a one-time expense,
Right.
it's not recurring, and you safeguard yourself moving forward. If it's small things that are operational, it's no big deal. I mean, this is a big budget. You can, so that's why the answer is yes, but be careful about how much you're increasing your budget on an operational basis. Does that make sense?
yeah, we just had a lot of mosquito and fly infestation, and it's been pointed out. Now,
Yeah.
I've seen it, but I don't know if it's more than normal. I mean, I've never, sometimes you just don't pay attention to things like that, but there has been a concern of mosquito and flies.
We're gonna have Steven in front of you, and we can have that discussion. Yes, sir.
We can overrule that. No.
Steven's ready.
¿Dónde está Steven? Is he
He's like,
here?
"Ah,
Ah, chinga.
Can we give him any more caffeine? You know what?
First row. First row.
We got some capital outlay that Parks requested. Again, capital, no pain to do capital, if you wanna do it.
What does it mean by utilities water, not recommended? For parks?
We need more water. We actually need to buy more water from utilities for irrigation.
Oh.
And so I'm telling Mark to reduce his rates for us.
Okay.
Page 49. Let's see. And again, really, I want you all to spend time on that and bring it back, when we have them here. On 49, we did do some upgrades here. I want to point that out. In pools, we are having trouble filling positions. several places in the city. But certainly in the seasonal, in the summertime, the cities around us are actually outpaying us, okay? They're actually paying higher salaries than we are, and certainly in the seasonal positions. I guess there's less people that wanna work, I don't know, but we are recommending we increase that, and in fact, we made an adjustment this year already, to ensure we can bring them in.
You mean to tell us there's other things to do in other cities?
Evidently. Es un charco que tiene.
charco.
49, some small things that you may want to consider. 50, we're doing, there's a big one here somewhere. Yeah, kitchen improvements to Lark.
Wasn't that this past year, or did I confuse?
We didn't do it. Evidently.
Oh, okay.
No, I think it was the other promotion.
Omar doesn't want the acoustic panel, he's okay with it.
In
It's Las Palmas, just say yes.
In page 52, what time is it?
I already said yes to the panel.
No, you're at good page, one, for 30
Page 52.
I got to
Is that 52? 51. Oh, 52, yeah. Page 52 is the last page. You've got furniture for the library, and the members of the Development Corporation heard it last week. We actually put it over there, so we're recommending that be purchased from the Development Corp.
Very good.
Yeah, all the 110, right?
Yeah, 2 times.
Yeah, 2 times.
So, here's part of my answer, Commissioner. So, the staff requested $10.5 million above what we call the baseline. And that would put you at a 7% increase to the budget, right? And they requested 20 new positions. And so our recommendation is pretty hefty still, 6.2 million gets you about at 4, and that's also a guiding principle, you know. Earlier we talked about fund balances and revenue and all this stuff. The increase in budget, it's just not any different than our home budgets. You can't go buy 5 new cars, right, suddenly, and you're gonna be okay. So you have to have a very deliberate growth, and as your budget gets bigger, that 4% means more dollars. Again, if we want to do some capital out of that 6.2, nothing wrong with that. We're at over 200 days of working capital.
Right.
And
On that, 223 days, if the 6.2 was 0, which is, kind of a break-even budget, what would that do to working capital days? Would it bring it back to the 180, or what number would it bring it back to? I'm just wondering what the difference is between the 223.
one day is 355. 6, 2, 6,
So you get
4,
this number.
501,
And end up getting
355, 176.
That's a big calculator, Roy.
I'm
Yeah,
gonna say.
20 years old.
T.I. Roy.
That's not a lot.
ingeniero. Es la
Yeah,
ingeniería. No,
that's the engineering. That's a graphing.
Sorry, Roy.
All
Engineer.
the graphs.
Yeah. Really, I'm sorry.
I guess I bring it up because we've, in the past, been comfortable in the 180 range. Even though what our minimum is 140, and even 140 seems to be pretty conservative. But 223 seems like we're maybe not funding
Yeah.
some projects that we could be out of cash. I don't know. I mean, it's just
Yeah, no, that's an excellent.
philosophically,
Okay.
just
You're right on.
Since Omar and I have been on this board, I mean, that's part of the discussion, even with the predecessors that have already turned off or gotten off, is there's this
idea.
fine line between, do we go out and because at the time the interest rates were so low, we borrow the money, or do we use the money that we already have, not have to pay interest, especially on projects that are at or near shovel-ready, where we can say, hey, let's do the expenditure. And so Commissioner Haddad asked a very, no, you did, I'm sorry, Commissioner Quintanilla That's a good question, because with interest rates rising, it really may not behoove the city to go out and get a GO or get a certificate of obligation. And if we have the money ready on hand, turn in a couple of CDs, I imagine, or the textbook, whatever, and pull it out, and they're ready to go, make the expenditure. And like you say, if it's a capital project, not a recurrent expense, which I completely agree with you, that's what we're looking at. And if 223 and we're comfortable with 160 or 180, whatever that difference translates into money, then let's really look at that. Those projects, like I said, are capital, they're ready to go and do that.
No, I don't disagree. And so when we go through the capital expenditures, there are some projects that we're not recommending, right?
Mhm.
Because those funds are being depleted.
Right.
And so if you choose to do them, absolutely. And we've done it, in fact, in your tenure, we've done it twice, where we've actually had to transfer out during the year because our fund balance was so high,
How much does that 6.2 million translate in working days?
about 20,
20?
It's $47,000.
How much is it, what was the question?
355,000 a day.
20 days.
Roy, what was the
So we
question
can-
actually?
We got a lot of
The
leeway.
question was, how many days does that 6.2 million represent? It's about 20.
Well, but we also gotta be careful, because if the rates are going higher, that usually means inflation. You take out that number, inflation cost will eat up the
Yeah,
days
that's
real
true.
quick.
Yeah.
So we gotta
Yeah, you have to balance, and so,
quickly.
yeah.
Cause
Yeah, I
it
mean-
does sound real good, hey, we have the money, let's just take care of everything, but.
Yeah, I
it
think,
can
I think
go
the
quick.
general consensus, and we've seen this over the last few budget sessions, with the city being healthy, we've wanted to be very aggressive in investing, right? If we're not investing the taxpayer dollar, we're not growing, we're not developing. So I think we definitely want to be aggressive in ensuring that if something is shovel ready, and we think we can get it done or started in that fiscal year, obviously within the capacity of the departments, without being strained, right? Just adding projects on the list, and we should probably do them within reason. I think that's
Yeah,
what it
and
is.
the reason that number's so big, the 220 some, is it's already big, right? It's already big. We're probably at close to 200, right?
Yeah.
And that 6.2 gets you at 220 some.
So
So-
even going back to the property tax rate before this last one, so even if we went to the one before, this last one would be what, 300 and some thousand? If we went to the one before, seems like there's still some.
No, the 300,000 was to get you to that 2013 rate.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, this
Wow.
already is cutting the 1.57 that we're going
Yeah.
down
Yeah,
is probably over 1.5 million
oh, okay.
that we're reducing revenue by reducing the tax rate.
Because we've already added so many other properties, and the values have gone up too, so the combination of the two. But it seems like we have enough to merit or warrant, going back to that 10-year number, potential.
We can do it. Okay, so again, when it comes to an operating expense, you want to be careful about how much it increases, right, from year to year.
Roy, as we did, I guess, about a month or two ago, we had to do an ordinance amendment to the budget, particularly, I think, because of the rising cost of fuel. There were certain departments that there had to be a transfer.
Yes.
When this budget was created, did each department where they have the equipment or capital that requires fuel, let's just take that as an example, for fuel costs, was that considered, the price of fuel maybe projecting?
Yes.
Increasing 5, 10, 15, 20,
Absolutely.
30%, whatever?
Absolutely, yes.
We don't want to be caught in a short part like we did,
Right.
not knowing what we
Well,
have.
based on what we just did at mid-year, we used those new figures to prepare this budget.
For this, okay.
Yeah. That's just to annoy you, I'd show it to you again. So, capital projects, 278 million. Obviously, a couple of them are big. Anzalduas is at 83. Now, what we're gonna recommend to you on Monday, we've got a resolution on the bridge board for them to approve. That resolution goes to the city commission 2 weeks later, and we'll have our financial advisor at that meeting for the actual loan Of the 83 million, and actually, we're gonna talk about it here in a minute. Well, I'll just wait till I get there. So we're gonna recommend that we put about a $2 million cushion into that total construction dollar. And that bank has almost agreed that we can do a one-time payback. Let's say that we borrow 60 million and we only need 57. Usually they don't say, okay, you can just reduce your debt by 3 million. They're gonna be willing to do that.
Nice.
So those are
We're gonna use
the
that.
several funds,
Okay.
Anzaduas, airport,
We're
it's
gonna
got a
use
lot of
that.
work going on,
And
IT.
that's,
That's actually a very small number compared to everything. They're probably getting over $1 million of capital, but that fund has 270.
On the Anza Dos Bridge, of that figure, how much of that is gonna be where the state is participating?
Yeah, so I've got a graph coming
Okay.
up.
Very good.
The infrastructure and improvement, that's the stimulus money, 38.3 million, that's still to be spent. Development Corp, we've got $14 million in there. CIP, CDBG, parklands, drainage fee, and so on. So here's Development Corp. We're looking at about a $21 million fund balance at the beginning of the year. Yeah. And again, we're gonna have a whole day, a whole session of Development Corp. So I'll give you the highlight. We're appropriating, or forecasting 22 million of total revenue, 20 million plus in sales tax alone, and then appropriating 26 million. One of the reasons is what we do every year. We're moving projects from this fiscal year to next. And if we do all of that, you'll have 14,590,000. Now, what I want to highlight is that we just went to Development Corp last week, and a board member raised a great question. What happened to the press box? And so we looked that afternoon. It was in last fiscal year's budget, right? And after I saw that, I remember having the conversation with MISD. They said, we're going to bid the project prior to September the 30th. And we said, if you do that, we'll cut you the check, right? Well, they didn't. They didn't do it prior to September 30th. They didn't request the money. And so this fiscal year, we actually didn't budget for it. We didn't have it. So we're recommending we put it in there. It wasn't in the Development Corp last week. We're gonna have to go back to them. It's a commitment that the City Commission did some 3 years ago or so. So this new numbers does include it, and it also includes a management fee of 500,000. It was 400,000. We recommended to the Development Corp to increase it. That money goes to the general fund, and it's for everything we provide. Management, IT, HR, construction, finance, and so on. So those two things I wanted to highlight, and again, we're gonna have to go back to Development Corp. Convention Center, they've done a great job out there during the last several years, even with what we went through. Again, they're gonna present
up there, I don't know if
here in a
you-
few days. Beginning estimated fund balance is 7.3.
Oh, I didn't see
Now, I
it.
want to point something out because you're going to see this consistently in a lot of these enterprise funds. You look at the adjusted budget right next to it, and it shows $4.2 million of beginning working capital. And then right next to it, we say it's 7.3. And you're like, what the hell is
Right.
going on here? That's because we're missing, deliberately, because we don't have enough room, a column that we use to estimate what they're going to spend.
Oh.
So what that tells you is we're going to spend less than we thought, and we're going to have a bigger fund balance than we estimated. So total revenues for the convention center is estimated at right at 5 million. Transfer in from the hotel tax fund of 1.89. And then total expenses of 9.8. Again, Yahaira's gonna be talking about this whole thing, but I wanna point to this number here of $2.8 million. That's a big number. That's something that you're gonna need to decide if you wanna do. That, number one, is a crossing that we wanna do on Ware Road. And I'm afraid that the estimate's a little low, but nevertheless, it's about 1.8 million. And that's to go under Ware Road. Pretty cool. And the second thing is the storage building, estimated at about $1 million. We just don't have space for everything that we're doing, so that's why that number's so big, and we'll give you details.
Is Ware Road a state highway?
Yes,
Do we need permission to do?
yes.
There's a
But
project-
it's easier to go under it than over it,
Over, okay.
believe it or not. Okay, so that's that. Performing Arts Center also doing very well, beginning working capital about 3.2. Total revenue is 1.2. We do transfer in hotel tax money as well as venue tax money. And then their total appropriation estimate is 2.5. We're transferring money into the depreciation fund, also into the gang. And this fund actually pays a management fee to the convention center. And she'll talk about that when we get there. Hotel occupancy. This is where the money comes from. So this is the hot tax. We're estimating about 3.6 million of revenue. And again, this is an in and out. There's no reason to have a fund balance here because all it does, it collects it and sends it out. So we're looking at 1 million, the number I just gave you, 891 to the convention center, 473 to the performing arts, 200,000 to the marketing fund, which is the gang, and 100,000 for overtime of the parade. Additionally, 945,000 to the chamber. And the way we split that is on the bottom of that page, on page 59. 2 cents of the 7 goes to the chamber, 4 cents to the convention center, 1 cent to the performing arts. Venue tax, very restrictive. It's for the Performing Arts Center, period. No other place that it goes. So it's basically to pay down debt and for operations. And the venue tax is doing fairly well. It's doing what it's supposed to do. You'll see the transfers out there. 566 to...
Where did it come from?
That's an additional levy on top of the hotel occupancy tax of 2 cents.
On top of the hotel occupancy, there's 2 cents.
Right. Hotel occupancy tax is 7%,
Right.
and then this is 2 on top of that. And you needed the state legislature to approve that specifically for McAllen and the Performing Arts Center. And so that's why it's very restricted.
On rooms that are booked, right?
Rooms that are booked in McAllen.
Right. So it basically comes from out of town.
Yeah, best money. The best money there is. Airport, what you're seeing here is a fund balance of 15 million going down to 7. And the reason is that we're spending down the CARES funds. We got a lot of money for the airport. This past year, we got 4.3 million. The prior year, we got more than that. And we're anticipating 1.9 for next fiscal year. So we've got a lot of capital projects that Liz is recommending we do to the runway and safety and cargo and so on. And we'll go through those when she's here. But very, very healthy fund balance, 7.3 million.
Are some of those capital improvement projects still part of the drainage?
Yeah,
Around the
yeah.
perimeter?
That one's almost complete.
Yeah,
But
the west and
it
the
looks
east.
really nice over on the east side of the airport.
Right.
Toll bridge. Oh yeah, toll bridge. That's the 10, 11 million dollars that we talked about earlier. We don't keep a big fund balance there because we kind of use it as an in and out also. Bring in the revenue, pays for all of its expenses, and then it sends out distribution to the city of Hidalgo and the city of McAllen. And for us, we're looking at 4.7 million to McAllen. And as the years go on and we get truck traffic, we're hoping that number is 6 or 7. And the reason is, among others, is that, you know, we have the 2 bridges as a network. So the next one is on San Duas. Kind of the same thing, we're a little more cautious with Ansalduas because of all the things that we know, the volatility of trucks, yes and no and so on. But we still feel optimistic even with empty truck traffic. This does not include any new cargo because we won't be finished. So it's basically increasing traffic. 3.6 million is our estimate for tolls. And we anticipate that that number should reach 10 or 11 million once truck traffic begins.
Did I hear you be a little less optimistic about?
No, more optimistic. We're optimistic of Ansalduas.
Okay. Yeah, just wanted to make sure I heard that
Yeah,
correctly.
yes, sir.
Okay, great.
On the financing, you've got a lot of debt service A, B, and the CIP fund, and then the rest are operational. It's a pretty clear-cut budget for Anzalduas. Now, the next one is Anzalduas CIP. What we've done is that we've included the new expansion in here. We're actually gonna separate it, probably during the fiscal year, but we've got it in here now. You see the $83 million of cargo construction. And to answer the question of earlier, it's at the top of the page, Commissioner. 22 million from TxDOT, 4.1 million that we already have, and then 63 million that NatBank has approved. We think that number's probably gonna be about 58, is what we're gonna need.
58 out of the 63.
Right.
But you're gonna get the whole 63.
We're approved for 63, and so then when you award it, it's gonna be, it'll be less, even with the cushion that we recommend.
Does the bank make a one-time disbursement, or does it,
No, they fund
The-
based on completion,
on completion? Okay.
right?
No, NatBank's gonna be big old slug of money.
So if we start accruing interest, they.
That's my next question.
No, no, we've got, and you're gonna see that, that's part of the approval that you're gonna make, is it's not gonna start accruing immediately. And then we can decide when the first debt service payment is. Obviously, you know, there's an interest factor to that. But let me get the specifics on that. We'll get it to you before we finish budget.
And are we going to be the ones in the driver's seat to make the draws?
Yes,
as a contingent?
City of McAllen.
And does that need approval from TxDOT as well? Oh, no, because it had nothing to do with the loan.
No.
That's right.
Yeah, no.
That's right, just us.
Yeah,
Okay.
The NatBank has to be one themselves, no?
yeah, I think it is one of those. Because it's a loan.
That's not the Mexican side.
No, that's not the Mexican side.
Right.
That's only us.
But
Only us.
NatBank is financing them too.
No.
No.
Mexico's got, believe it or not, they found $20 million that they can use.
Can you imagine that?
I thought the whole purpose of NatBank was because we were going to sort of.
That's how it
fund
started.
both
Yeah,
at the
that's
same
how-
time.
That's how it started, but as it turns out,
But
the
now,
rate,
but I know now with rates going up, we're getting like a blended rate, right? They committed to the initial amount at the original rate, and obviously a market rate
Right.
for the difference, right?
right?
So there's kind of a blended rate. If we're only funding ourselves, aren't there better financing options than 4.5 with NatBank?
I don't think so, but,
I don't want to start over, don't get me wrong.
Yeah, no.
I'm just saying, because I was originally under the impression that we were going with NatBank primarily because of the benefit of financing both at the same
Right.
time, same source.
that was the driver, yes, sir. As it turns out, I mean, we still think that the rate is good. They'll either do all or none,
Yeah. Okay.
okay? They'll do the whole thing or not at all. So in other words, we try to get them to say, get us the 33 million at 3% and let us go out to the market for the rest. And they won't do it.
We are.
Yeah, neither.
But nevertheless, we are getting numbers
Just
probably
to-
by tomorrow on what the market is right now.
Like a private placement or even a bond. Or
Yeah, and Berger's working on that.
Did we lock in that, the 4.7, the higher rate?
Yeah,
And then
4.5.
Yeah.
I think subsequently, rates pulled back a little bit this past week.
Yeah, actually, yeah, the Fed did that and then rates went down.
Yeah.
The long-term rates.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Since I'm a non-banker, unlike my brethren, can we?
I act like
You
one.
wanna first-
Can we invest that money into like an interest-bearing
We
account
put it
or
in an
something?
interest-bearing account while we hold it.
Oh, yeah, as long as you don't have, yeah, as long as you don't have negative arbitrage.
Okay, all right. Just asking.
PEG, you know what we use that for? It's basically to be able to broadcast commission meetings to the public. It has a very healthy fund balance. We need to figure out how to do
We need a new
the right
dice.
thing. We need new color in the letters.
On the city of McAllen.
Colors are fine. Those are fine.
Black
We need
letter.
new colors on the letters. Yes, sir. That's gonna be about 400,000.
Maybe a mute button on the mic.
Drainage
Oh,
fees,
boy.
we're almost there.
You hit it and it turns around.
Page
Yeah.
66. Drainage fee, we really want to commend the engineering department. They are moving projects, we're probably between 1 and 2 years, probably closer to 2 years, ahead of schedule.
Good.
And we're doing really well. We're gonna have a fund balance of 5.3. And so, as you know, every year we bring in new revenue. This year, we're looking at drainage fee, we're looking at about almost 1.3 million. And with the resources that we've gotten, they've done a great job.
These other ones are done, right? The ones that don't, that zero out?
Correct.
Okay.
CIP, you're gonna see that fund. We're gonna bring that, it starts with about 9.7 million. We've got a lot of projects in there. And looking at a fund balance of 605.
One of many.
Traffic and drainage, same thing. Look that over, we're gonna get a detail of this whole thing. Traffic improvements, 453,000, and drainage, almost 13 million out of the CIP. Parks facility, that's the new, parks facility over on mile 3 and 23rd.
It'll be done this
It'll
fiscal
be finished this fiscal year. This is the stimulus money, page 70. Projects that we basically already picked, we just need to get ready for the funding, and some of those are already moving forward. Health insurance, you put a plug at mid-year. We're hoping that the change that you made will make the turn that we need. And so all we're looking for here is to have a break even. Agencies is on the Development Corp. The Development Corp has already voted on these. The only change there that we didn't do is VITA. Otherwise, all of those numbers stay the same. And we're gonna go through that whole Development Corp, like I said. Here, in the general fund, you've got these decisions to make. You've got Amigos del Valle, Comfort House, Museum of South Texas, Mujeres Unidas, McAllen Town Band, and so on. That's page 72. That you still have to make a decision on. That's it?
No more? We still have an hour and a half.
So, yeah, 2 hours. So like the CARES Act money and the ARPA funds money, do we have to spend it by a certain time?
Yes, sir. You still have about probably 2.5 years.
Okay. 'Cause like,
How much time do we have? Let me be exact. December 2024.
oh,
Yeah, 2.5
So
years.
even the
Damn, I'm
capital,
good.
we're still okay because we have time to
Yep.
do the plans for that and all that stuff.
Yes, sir. Any questions? So tomorrow, we'll start with departments, and you'll be able to
On the,
throw some questions at them.
on the tax rate from a dollar perspective,
Blistering cross-examination.
I don't think any of us are interested in an election. So what would be the difference in dollars collected between the voter approval tax rate of 4,869 and 4,799?
Was that HP again?
4869, is that the
So
word?
4,86943, right, the voter approval tax rate? But that's kind of, we're capped at by the state legislature, right?
It's about,
To
that's
the-
about 700, a little over $700,000.
That's,
Between the, let's say, the recommended 4,799 and the 4,869.
Correct.
700,000 per 100 dollars valuation, what are we saving on $100,000 home?
Well, that's on the tax rate.
It's so low that.
Yeah, so it's 0.7.
We can.
So on 100,000?
Yeah, but you're gonna use it. That'll be fine.
That's the half cent.
$70
We can go back to this rate.
Okay.
It'll still be
Yeah.
okay.
per year.
Per year.
So you're gonna go back in time, 10 years? Is that what you're doing?
Definitely.
Yeah, because sales tax revenue
Trying to
is,
analyze really
haven't you seen the graph?
the nominal impact to
So you'd rather have it at the, you'd rather have it at the 48.69?
No, I think because we're projecting more conservative, like 4799. What I'm trying to assess is, if it's really the right move, because what you're doing is, in perpetuity, you're still collecting money. 700,000 guaranteed per year, on top of that tax rate now being applied to continue.
Yeah, I'd rather get back to the revenue.
And to me, the cost of operation will always go up.
No, I'd go with the
I'm a bit torn, I know it's, I'm trying to determine the nominal savings per household in general, even though the ones that really would be saving would be the commercial properties.
I don't disagree with you, if that's something that you all really want to discuss, because really, I mean, when we put this number together,
Because
we
we're
wanted
still
it
gonna be technically reducing the tax rate. Because none of us are gonna wanna go to an election.
We're recessed?
Yeah.
Good. Okay, guys, this meeting is adjourned, or this workshop. Thank you all very much.